Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday and it is 4 p.m. ET, and you have found us here at Crime Time on a Mighty Blaze. We are so pleased that you are here today. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the author of USA Today bestselling 13 novels of suspense. And we are pleased today to have with us Janice Hallett, whose absolutely brilliant and unique tour de force novel, The Appeal, has been out in the UK for a year or so, but comes to the US next week. And oh my golly, I am so pleased to be able to talk to Janice today about this wonderful, brilliant novel. I have been gushing in the green room, you all, about this. And I told Janice to forgive me for gushing throughout this interview because honestly, truly, you have never read a book like this. And when this is over, you're going to go out right now after the event and grab your copy. Well, pre-order your copy of The Appeal. Welcome, 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 Janice, to Crime Time. Are you excited about the book coming out in the US?
Very excited, and I think all the more so having seen the great response we've had here in the UK. I can't wait for American readers to get to know The Appeal.
Well, I can understand the wonderful response because you all, this book, and I'm just going to show you a page, is all in emails and documents. And you can see how crazy different that is. It's incredibly diabolical. It's incredibly riveting. I was telling Janice earlier that I was reading it at 2 in the morning and I just kept turning the pages and turning the pages and turning the pages. So I want to talk later about how you did it, but just tell us why you would take on such a task as doing an entire book, almost an entire book, in emails and texts and documents.
Well, I have to say it was a complete accident, and it was ignorance is bliss. It was that kind of situation. I'd been working in TV, writing TV specs and trying to get my own ideas off the ground for TV series. And I'd had this idea about a couple who'd been overseas volunteering. They were forced back to their hometown and found that their experience informed their suspicions about a fundraising campaign in the hometown. Now, I had that idea knocking about as a TV idea, but when I decided to write a novel, I thought, well, I've got this idea. How about I take emails going back and forth between the minor characters? And so I shut down my script writing software, opened up Word, and just went at it. I didn't know what I was letting myself in for. And that was how it started.
Well, readers don't know what they're getting themselves in for either with this marvelous book that we're talking about, The Appeal, which is written pretty much in emails and texts. But at some point, you had to realize that it couldn't be just back and forth between two people's emails. How did you decide to expand it to? I mean, I have to say that I can understand the idea. I know I could see the idea of, oh, a book in emails, but it would take me about 5 seconds to decide that would be impossible. It would be impossible. How did you have the nerve to do it?
Again, it was complete ignorance, and knowing that I'd worked script writing for plays and films and TV, I kind of knew about dialogue and how people spoke and how they spoke to each other. And so I was quite confident writing those kinds of prose, if you like. And so I just set off. And I have to say, the first problem I came up against was not having a framework. And I very quickly invented, I mean, if you eventually read the book, you'll see that there are two young lawyers going through this material, and we see their correspondence too.
Let
And
me
I
talk about
very
that in
soon
a minute.
invented them.
Let me talk about that in a minute because I want to take all of you through this step by step because um, it's a really fun book to read. It sort of reminds me of The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger, that it looks very complex, but actually, if you let the book just wash over you, it's completely understandable and completely fun to read and completely immersive. Let me tell you, welcome, welcome, welcome again. If you are new to A Mighty Blaze, this is Crime Time. We gather every Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET to talk about crime fiction, mysteries, suspense, and thrillers on A Mighty Blaze. A Mighty Blaze was conceived 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic by the marvelous Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt to keep us together in the pandemic, keep us talking about books, keep us meeting new authors, keep us discovering new books, and just keeping our community together. So we persevere, and we are so pleased that you are here today to hear about Janice Hallett's The Appeal, which comes out in the US next week. So it is available now for pre-order. And as I keep saying to you, you all do not miss this book. Let me quickly tell you about Janice Hallett. Janice Hallett is a former magazine editor, award-winning journalist, and government communications writer. She wrote articles and speeches for, among others, the Cabinet Office, the Home Office, and Department for International Development. I should have told you Janice is in London. Her enthusiasm for travel has taken her around the world several times, from Madagascar to the Galapagos, Guatemala to Zimbabwe, Japan, Russia, and South Korea. A playwright and a screenwriter, she penned the feminist Shakespearean stage comedy Netherbard and co-wrote the feature film Retreat. And The Appeal is her first novel. And as my grandmother used to say, it is a doozy. So, Janice, I want to talk about greed and failure and gossip and privilege and the need to belong and a psychology of a community and community theater and class differences and about pretense and play acting and communications. But first, we usually talk about the plot of a book here on Crime Time first, but going back to the structure of this book, because this completely changed the way I think about storytelling. You open a book and someone says essentially once upon a time. How did you were talking about that that you decided that it needed a structure for the book. And what you did is the book begins with an email from a person who we take to be an important lawyer, assigning his two people who we take to be his clerks, a pile of documents. And he says, take a look at this and tell me what you think. So it's so perfect because that is what a novel is. That's what a mystery is. Your readers want to solve the mystery. And the lawyer is instructing the readers to solve the mystery. We don't even know what it is. When you came upon that, and forgive me for blabbling, when you came upon that, did everything just click together?
It clicked together fairly quickly, I have to say. I mean, again, I was quite happy to write dialogue. So writing people writing to each other came quite naturally at first. And I think it was when I got to the end of the first draft that I was more thinking, well, what have I done here? What have I got? How can I sort of make this more of an engaging read as you go along? But I think I was myself having a lot of fun with those characters and with those social situations. And I think that comes across as you read it.
Well, there were times that I laughed out loud, absolutely so, and we can talk about that. But what you have created with The Appeal is essentially an interactive novel, because all of your readers, as I said, want to solve the mystery. And you put us with Femi and Charlotte, the two clerks, as they pour their way through these documents. And when you set it up that way, we know that we're on a treasure hunt, and we just take in the information and allow our brains to settle it out in the way that it goes. But did you know the whole story first and then just presented it in the documents, or did you learn the story as you went along?
I completely learned it as I went along. I didn't plan a thing. I didn't have any whiteboards or post-it notes. I didn't make notes. I simply met each character myself through their emails as they occurred to me. And it's a really organic, evolutionary way to write, which it's not how all writers work, but yeah, that's how I did it. And I think that's why the key sort of murders and crimes happen quite late. So we get to know everybody before the big action starts. And you can see that in the novel.
But on the other hand, because the lawyer, your lawyer character, has set Femi and Charlotte off on this, and the reader off on this task, we do know that something big has happened. And that's what the treasure hunt is, essentially, to find out what the big thing that happened was, and then also to find out why. It's interesting because, I think about when my husband and I watch television together, crime shows on television together. And I'll say, "Ooh, it's the sister. Oh, somebody drowned. Oh, I don't like what he did." And my husband says, "Can't you just watch it?" And I say, "No, no, I've got to figure this out." And that is exactly how you embrace your readers as well. You understand how a mystery reader's brain works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's dropping tiny clues, and sometimes very, very subtle. It can be a clue that's just in someone's turn of phrase or something that they don't say. That's a really key thing, I think, in the appeal, that what we don't say speaks as loud sometimes as what we do say. And it's what people don't tell each other through these emails, or that they'll tell one person and not another, that is a clue, or it could be a clue. Or it's sometimes a clue and it sometimes isn't.
Well, I mean, but we get to know the character. Well, first of all, back to the emails.
Mhm.
When you send someone an email, you pretty much expect that they're the only person that's going to read the email.
Mhm.
And there are sort of Venn diagrams of people who certainly would never see someone else's personal email, probably. So, for instance, if I said to you, I just love your book. I would love to come to London and talk to you about it in person. And you wrote back, "Sure, I'd love to see you someday." And then I wrote to Karen, let's say, the producer of this show, and said, "Oh, Janice Hallett is inviting me to London. She says she'd love to see me." And that's what you can also do in an email, is to twist a thing from reality into how the character wants it to be. And you do that throughout, and we see that.
That's right. And sometimes that anomaly between the two emails would be deliberate and quite conscious. And at other times, it won't be. It's something the character does really unconsciously because they can't bear the reality. So they change it and make it something that's far more comfortable for them. And I think working out which it is part of the fun.
And you do reveal, I mean, one of the tent poles of a wonderful novel is character development. And you might think that that would be a difficult thing to do via email, but every character comes across so beautifully realistically, which means that you had to write from all of their points of view.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was something that I spent a lot of time on in the rewriting process. I looked really carefully at how each character signed on and signed off to each other character. So that was quite a complicated thing to do. And my aim really was so that you could read through it without paying a whole lot of attention to the email headers. As soon as you saw that opening line, you knew who was emailing who. And that was part of my aim. And that, I think that says such a lot about how you feel about someone, how you introduce yourself, and how you sign off in
Of
real life
course.
as well as the novel.
Of course, because you go to all best and that's one person, or you go to XOXO and hugs and you know that that's someone else, or you look for a proliferation of exclamation marks and you know who that email is from. And that's why I thought about it, the time traveler's wife, because you really don't need to be so careful about reading who the emails are from, because you will know from the context and you will know from the language who the emails are from. So I always talk about how, when we talk about unreliable narrators, how we're all unreliable narrators. Everybody is, because we want the world to be the way we want it to be. And that's so revealed by these emails.
Yeah, I think with emails, you know, the person writing was completely off guard. They were completely talking privately to one other person, and to be eavesdropping on that conversation, knowing that something has happened. I mean, that was just it was a great fun to write, and I know I hope that's, you know, part of the fun of reading.
Well, you give the reader almost a sense of eavesdropping on people's lives, of reading over their shoulder.
Oh, definitely. And it was only later, it's after I'd written the book, I found out from someone who works in the industry that in the legal industry there is something called e-discovery, where people working on a case do get a great big bunch of correspondence that might or might not be relevant, and they have to trawl all the way through it. I mean, there's no deleting any electronic correspondence. So what you do with the appeal and what Femi and Charlotte are doing, and the reader is doing, is actually a real thing. People do that as a job.
Oh,
So you
sure.
can
Oh,
eavesdrop for a
absolutely.
living.
I mean, as a journalist, we know that. Never put anything in email that you don't want someone else to see, because they will see it. And my husband is a criminal defense attorney. And I can't tell you how many times there have been criminal cases that turned on someone's texts that
Yeah.
they thought no one would ever see. But one of the million things that I love about this book is how aware you are of where the reader is in the story and what the reader will need to shepherd them along the way. At the very beginning, you put in the cast of a play, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, which gives a way of telling who the characters in the book are. And that I thought was quite brilliant, with, and as you all can see, the little yellow stickies from the lawyer saying, this is who these people are, just so you know. So at the moment when the reader might be thinking, who are these people and why do I care? You say, no, it's all good. Here they all are. Here they all are. And I can list them for you. And then another thing, just at the point that the reader is saying, this is a new adventure for me, and I'm not sure where this is going. Femi and Charlotte, who are working on the case, say exactly the same thing. Let me read it to you all in text. So I'm laughing as I say it because it's so good, Janice. Charlotte says, I'm up to Barry Walford's martial arts exam, and literally nothing has happened except auditions for a play. Where are you in all this? And Femi says, further than that, keep going. And Charlotte says, do we need to read All My Sons? That's the play that the community theater is doing. Do we need to read All My Sons? The script is online. And Femi says, no, whatever this is, it's not about a play. And Janice, I just applauded. I just started applauding because it's so funny. It reveals Femi and Charlotte, but it also shows an awareness of where the reader is. Talk about those shepherding moments along the way.
Well, I work quite closely with my editor on that, because being a first-time novelist, I didn't have so much experience of putting a novel together, or
Ah,
any experience. We worked together. I'd done a lot of Femi and Charlotte throughout, but then she read it and said, this is where we might need a bit more, you know, hand-holding or a bit more information here. So I did have sort of a first reader in my editor who helped me out with that. And she was quite right, because Femi and Charlotte kind of hold our hands really through the story. If we're not keeping up, it doesn't matter, because they will help. And I think they work really well in that respect.
and another time that Femi and Charlotte show up is exactly the time we need them. Again, hand holding, as your editor said, which is so perfect. There's a thing that's sort of twisty, and then Femi and Charlotte come back, and someone says, and Femi says, are you understanding what's going on? And Charlotte sort of lists what happened, and then Femi says what it means.
Mm-hmm.
So the book shows you that there are two levels of action. one, what it is, one, what the action is, and one, what the action means.
Mm-hmm.
And it teaches us to be detectives. Was that fun to write?
It was wonderful to write, and I a lot of the time I was thinking of Charlotte and Femi as detectives, almost like the detective character in, say, a regular crime novel.
Sure.
They were playing that role, despite being sitting at a desk reading printouts of emails. Nonetheless, they were, doing the investigations. So
But
yeah, it was wonderful.
I mean, it's even cleverer than that, because our guides don't really know what they're looking for. And they begin to coalesce this information just like the reader does. And they begin to have ideas, and they're not always right.
No, just like the reader. I mean, they go through quite a lot of scenarios, what could have happened, what might have happened, and then they get frustrated with what they're coming up with, and throw it all out and start again. So yeah, I was thinking of Femi and Charlotte being the reader, being with us, almost like we're sitting around the table with them while they're
Exactly.
going through it.
And when you're talking with someone, about solving a mystery, let's say, there are going to be times when you think, I don't think that's right. Or, oh no, remember the time that she said that? Go back and look at that. Let's see what that means now that we know this, which is exactly, as you say, how a detective thinks, but
Mhm.
it's exactly how a reader thinks as well. Susie Sharp is saying this book might just topple my TBR pile, but it's a must. It absolutely is a must. This is, I keep saying we're talking about The Appeal. This is a book unlike any you have ever read. Crime fiction, mystery fans, run right out and get this, which reminds me that we are giving away a copy of The Appeal today. Not my battered and bookmarked advanced reader copy, but this gorgeous, pristine, actual hardcover copy that no one has read yet. So leave a comment or a question for Janice throughout, and we will get to the winner in about 20 minutes. So please, please, please leave a question or a comment for Janice. I know you have so many of them, or just leave a standing ovation. I know some of you have read this already. The fabulous Kathy Boone Reel says it is such a clever novel, and Kathy is a wonderful reviewer, and we welcome her today. The milieu, as I sort of alluded to, is community theater, who is, in this particular case, is doing All My Sons. And that is such a perfect community to have a mystery. I mean, it's almost it is Agatha Christie-esque, but they're producers and directors and play actors and behind the scenes people. And it's just so multi-layered. And I know you have a background in that as well. Talk a little bit about why you decided to do that setting.
Well, I joined an amateur drama group when I was 14, and the group itself sort of folded about 30 years later, but I was still a member, and I'd done pretty much every job, from prompting and cleaning up after rehearsal to acting, directing, and writing my own plays. That was how I got started writing. So it was a world I knew really well. And I thought, they say write what you know for your first novel, and it was a no-brainer to set it there. It's such a wonderful world because the stakes are so high for a hobby. You can't just walk away if you're involved in a play. The show must go on. You have to be there in rehearsals. You have to be there on the night. You have to perform. You have to reach certain standards. It's a wonderful hobby when it goes right, and when it goes wrong, the stakes are very high. So yeah, it was a perfect world to set that novel in.
And just like the community that the theater is in, the community has its hierarchy and the theater has its hierarchy. And sometimes those are the same, and sometimes there aren't. And people are given roles. Talk a little bit about the roles in this book and how that sort of class struggle and aristocracy versus common people come out in this book.
Well, in the Fairway Players in the book, we have an alpha family who would be the aristocracy, who run the whole group. The wife, Helen, she's always the star. The children are big players in the group too. And your place in the group depends on how close you are to that family. So Sarah Jane is another character there. She's I don't know, a maid woman. She's very close to all of the alpha family, and she's quite confident in what she can do. Then we go right down to the bottom of the hierarchy, and the character called Izzy she's new to the area herself. She's not much newer than Sam and Kel, who've just arrived, and she struggles to find a place in the Fairway Players, but it's not for want of trying. She will try to keep getting into the group as best she can, and to see her efforts and her almost playing chess to try and get further up the hierarchy is it's another delightful aspect of the novel.
Well, Isabel is one of the most fascinating, intriguing, psychologically interesting, sweet, heartbreaking characters, fascinating, I've ever read. And she comes through so amazingly in her emails. You were saying that you didn't have a whiteboard and you didn't have a plan, but how did Isabel grow for you? I mean, she's
Well,
hilarious, she's heartbreaking.
yeah, Isabel is an exaggerated version of me, or perhaps someone I was years ago when I was younger and very, very shy. Isabel lives through her emails. She struggles to talk to people, but she will email them at length, multiple times a day if you're in her sights, which I don't do, by the way. That's not me. But I understand it. I understand Izzy, because she's very, very shy and can't get to people any other way. And I think how people view Izzy is very telling. For some people, she's very irritating and frustrating. They're very annoyed with her, and other people, like you, see her as heartbreaking, as a character who has issues and is just doing her best, to make her life a better one.
What do you think about that?
Um, it's interesting. It's interesting. I think it's fine, but I think everyone learns eventually that other people are almost always coming from a good place. They're not deliberately being irritating or annoying. Um,
No, I think it's lovely, and I think it's lovely, and I think it's a testament to your brilliance as a writer that you can create someone like Isabel who has multi layers, and we learn to understand her
mm,
as the book goes on, even as we're sort of shaking our heads at her. But she, like everyone in the book, is struggling to make her life, make herself be as happy as she can be, and also have a place in her world, whether it's in a family or in a family of the theater, or in a family with friends. We just want to find our place on the stage of how our lives are, and that's what this is.
yeah, friendship. Izzy doesn't take friendship for granted. She will do her best and she will work hard at friendship. Another character, Sarah Jane, doesn't need to. She's got this support network around her of friends and family, and she can brush people off if she wants to. Izzy doesn't have that. That that she can't do that because she doesn't have the friends. She doesn't have the support network. So yeah, I think that this hierarchy of friendship comes out a lot in the novel in these emails between people.
Exactly, exactly. And also the truth comes out in the emails between people, and how rickety the truth is when someone decides that making something up might be better for the greater good. Then everybody just sort of goes with this stories which grow and grow and grow.
Mhm.
And you all have to read The Appeal to find out a little bit more what I'm talking about. The title has at least 3 layers. Talk a little bit about that. Was it always called that?
Um, yes, it was called that when I was thinking of it as a TV series, and I had this dual, appeal, a legal appeal and an appeal for a fundraising appeal. Um, what was the third one you thought?
Well, I think it's sort of the appeal of being in a better world, the appeal of being accepted by this alpha family, the appeal of, what is the appeal of money? What is the appeal of power? What is the appeal of status? And how do we appeal to each other to get to find our place? it's sort of what I thought about it. I mean, if someone has money and status and power, you sometimes are willing to give them the benefit of the doubt rather than someone who is other, and you might decide that they're bad simply because they're new or from away or not in your community, and they're dismissed. So there's this appeal of community. Does that make any sense? Am I just making this up?
It does. It's brilliant, Hannah. Thank you. I didn't think of it like that way myself, but now you've said it. Yeah, absolutely. That's true.
It's what we want.
Yeah. And I think we can align ourselves with the wrong people for that reason. We can align ourselves with the person who is the strongest in a group and not the person who's right or the person who needs support. So yeah, it's we're probably all guilty of playing the hierarchy and not seeing through it at some point or another.
And going back to your playwright skills and your dialogue writing skills, when you do that, when you're writing a play, you have to be in someone else's head. You know, the method acting. When you're in a play and when you're writing a play, you have to be in someone else's head and understand their motivations. You know, understand what they want and how far they'll go to get it. Did you write the emails in a row chronologically of how it all happened?
Yes, I did, more or less. More or less. I mean, the first version I wrote had a lot more of Izzy emailing Sam, which I took out because it was just too much. But yeah, I got into the heads of every single character there. I think it is telling that something we haven't touched on yet is that there are 3 characters, main characters, that we never hear from. And that, again, that was quite an accident, but it's one of the most effective things in the book that we don't hear from these 3 characters.
Well, one of the things about writing from a point of view is that you don't the point of view character doesn't know anything unless they're told it or they see it or they read it. And if we're not in the point of view of a character, we don't know what they think or what their motives are or what they do or anything about them, which I will not say anything more about. Did that just about, you all were having this conversation about the appeal, and I don't mean to talk in code to you, but you will thank Janice Hallett and me when you read the book for not letting a lot of things come out. But this is all about structure. A Mighty Blaze is saying important to note who we don't hear from too in a mystery novel and in life. Because you think about, if you don't get an email from someone, you think, what's going on? What does this mean? What am I doing? What do I not know? What does everybody else know that I don't know? Was that a conscious decision for you to do that?
No, it was part of the decision of having the minor characters in this novel rather than in the TV show, the main characters will be center stage. So again, it was an accident. But as I went on and on with it, it did become really effective. I thought this is far better than if we were hearing from these characters because we're wondering more and it's another mystery. Well, I think one character we do eventually hear from. I won't say any more in case I give anything away. So I won't say more.
Well, the thing, again, going back to the structure, and then we will take some questions from the audience, which is people are just applauding you and applauding you. Janice, Janine is saying, can't wait to read The Appeal. And Sherry is saying, beautiful cover. And Carla is saying, can't wait to read this book.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as the book progresses, again, because you are such a genius at keeping your reader in mind, and as the story narrows down, we begin to understand what it's about. Femi and Charlotte think they know, and they try that out on their boss. And there's this sort of moment of drumming fingers on the desk, and we're sort of waiting. Is that right? And we're all thinking, that could be right. Is that really right? I wonder what the boss is going to say. He knows. And there's this sort of moment of suspense when we're going to figure out if Femi and Charlotte are right. And then some more documents are found. So again, you're shepherding us along, holding our hands throughout. Again, talk a little bit about that, the rhythm of it all, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, the rhythm, it was very organic as I was writing, and then I reverse engineered a few things. So for quite a while, I had to go back and forth through it and look to see how it was balancing out the emails with, there's the odd transcription in there with Femi and Charlotte and Tanner, their boss. So yeah, the structure had to work. But it did have to be the bulk emails, because that was the most interesting thing. That was the core that you had to look at. Everything else was picking that apart, but the emails were the main thing. So the structure, it was fun to do, but that was when the work began. When that first draft was done, the work had to begin to get that structure, so the reader was drawn through it in the right manner, and things were revealed at the right time and in the right pace.
I mean, there are these personal stories, and then there's the bigger circle of stories, and there's a bigger circle of stories, and then there's even a bigger circle of stories, and it's just so gorgeously done. And it's, well, I'm trying to form a question that isn't going to give something away, so I'll just forget about that. And let's see what questions we have from the audience. Oh, that's a good question. It's a great one. How does writing a play compare to writing a book for you? Perfect. What about that?
It's a great question. Writing a play, any sort of script writing, is a lot quicker. It's a lot faster. You're just dealing with dialogue, because you don't have to worry too much about what the characters are doing, because the director will do that. The actors will take it on board. What you're looking for is a structure and some dialogue in playwriting. So you can do it quickly, you can play around, you can experiment, because the director and the actors will then be experimenting themselves. Whereas a novel, on the other hand, that's just you and the words and the reader. No one else is going to have any input. So it's a lot more intense, and it takes a whole lot longer. I mean, a short play I could write in a week, maybe if the muse was with me, maybe even quicker. But a novel, no, that takes me around a year, 7 months to a year. So they're quite different whole processes, I would say.
But it's still a story, and that's why it's a story with a beginning and a middle and an end, with characters who you care about, and a problem, a mystery that needs to be solved. And in the end, you have a satisfying conclusion, and it changes the reader's world a little bit. And you certainly do that in The Appeal, I have to say, although in a different way. And the cool part about the emails, one of many things, is that an email is basically short. And so the reader is getting these just little bits of information, which is fascinating to read and absolutely diabolical on your part. Because, when we talk about just reading one more chapter, you can't just read one more chapter, because can I say this?
Yeah.
Because there aren't any chapters. There aren't any chapters. And I was telling Janice earlier that I was at page 125, and it was truly the middle of the night, and I couldn't stop reading. So I said, I'm just going to read one more chapter. And then I realized there aren't any chapters. There aren't any chapters, because there aren't chapters in email. It's just this back and forth, constant communication.
Yep.
So did somebody ever say you need chapters?
No, not at all. No, I think we thought of the emails as perhaps themselves chapters, and if people wanted to stop, they could stop. No, I didn't really think. I thought.
No, I think that's exactly right, and I think that's what's so I just keep saying what's so great about this, but it's just such a personal a book that has the reader in mind. You can take as many little tidbits as you want. You can gobble the whole thing down. It's fascinating. It's irresistible. It's revealing and a tour de force. Sherry is asking, what is your favorite part of writing?
Part of writing. Oh, wow. I've got loads of favorite parts, because I love most of the process, I have to say. I mean, I love starting something new and being on the brink of starting something. So there's nothing. And then when I start writing, there's something coming into being. And then I love finishing the first draft as well, because that's also an achievement. So yeah, I mean, I love most of the parts of it, I have to say.
I also love not only getting that idea and realizing that at some point it's going to be a whole thing. I actually had a dream about that once, and we'll talk about that some other time. But also when you are editing, as you've been talking about along the way, when you realize what you don't need, what you do need, how the structure can change, how it should balance. I mean, when you see your book come to life, that's sort of a goosebumpy time.
Oh, absolutely. It's like making a sculpture, isn't it? Putting the detail in instead of just having a lump of clay. You're doing the tiny little things that will make all the difference. So that's a great time as well. Yeah.
And taking out everything that you don't need.
Yeah, and that can be, that's brilliant. Yeah. It's just,
What is what's your did you read from the time you were a little girl? What were your favorite books?
yeah, I read a lot of Enid Blyton.
Hmm.
Well, I didn't have any books in my house. I mean, we went to jumble sales, so that's sales run by the local scouts, and I would pick up second-hand books there. And it was largely Enid Blyton that I'd read. Then read some Agatha Christie. Then I studied English, so I read a lot of classics, a lot of Victorian novels, which I think also informs my style quite a bit.
But Enid Blyton and Agatha Christie sort of ensemble casts.
Mm.
People working together for a goal together, and someone solving a mystery. That's sort of your brain. I mean, I would love to be inside your brain and see how it works. And I love that you started with Enid Blyton and Agatha Christie, because that is what you write.
Yeah, I love a mystery. I mean, if the way to reel me in immediately is to say, and nobody knows what happened. I'm immediately there. I mean, you've just got my attention with that. Yeah, it's the mystery.
Well, it is marvelous to talk with you. Do we have one last question? Vicky says, I find the inclusion of documents challenging. Yeah, I can tell you, Vicky, when I got this book and I saw how it was laid out, all in emails pretty much, I actually thought, and I will confess, I actually thought, please don't make me read this. Please don't make me read this. And it took me one page. And I thought, oh my golly, this is going to be fantastic. And it truly is fantastic. We will, Kathy says, since you didn't have the narrative inserts of as she typed, she rolled her eyes. Was it a struggle to get the words just right? You're so brilliant at this. Talk about that.
No, it wasn't a struggle. No, I mean, I just felt I put myself in the role of that person who was just writing that private email to that one other person, and thought what they'd say and how they'd say it. And so it's not always people emailing their friends or family. Sometimes they're trying to get something out of someone, a tradesperson. They're trying to get them to play for free. So they're saying certain things.
Stop.
Yeah. So yeah, I loved it. I suppose it was a bit like playwriting, but more intense and
I mean,
really in the heart of people.
if you get an email from someone and it's one word and it's really with 3 question marks after it, that's very different from really with the period at the end. And you hear that tone throughout. And that is another thing that Janice Hallett is so marvelous at. In about 30 seconds, we are going to post the winner of the appeal. One lucky winner will receive this fabulous, gorgeous book. And the rest of you are going to go out and pre-order this book right away. One final question for me is, will you ever write a book this way again? Are you going to be the email author?
I'm not done with it yet. My second book isn't quite that style, but I am going to revisit it again with what I've learned. And I won't say any more, but I'm not quite done with the style yet, put it that way.
It is, it is not a one-off, you all. I would absolutely love to read another book like The Appeal. It was fascinating and interactive and ingenious and brilliant and marvelous and satisfying at the ending and surprising and lovely and charming and fun. All those words. And Susie Sharp, who wins the appeal, is about to find out. Let me just say quickly before I say goodbye to the fabulous Janice, let me tell you that next week we have a super double show, 2 separate interviews. First, we will have Lisa Gardner, whose wilderness adventure, One Step Too Far, is just amazingly immersive, really scary and really tense. And this is a brilliant, brilliant book by a marvelous author. You know Lisa Gardner, she's a rock star. And another rock star author after that at 4:00. Look, we have Heather Gudenkauf's The Overnight Guest, about a true crime writer who may not be happy when she discovers the truth. And you will want to bundle up for this book. It is set in a blizzard, The Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkauf. But today we have talked to the marvelous Janice Hallett with her book, The Appeal, which comes out next week. Janice, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Hank. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I've loved talking with you, and I've loved talking with all of you as well. We're so pleased that you come to Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze, and we hope we will see you next time. Stay safe.